Behind every successful property investor is a story of struggle, sacrifice, and determination. Jackie Collier wasn't born into property wealth, nor did she inherit a real estate empire. She began her journey with nothing but determination, a vision to change lives. In just 1 year, she bought 8 properties. This is not your typical success story. This is a revolution in property.
I've always had massive imposter syndrome, and it has been a huge mindset shift to try and...
How did your early career shape your vision into property?
How can we help people get better homes? And the more I found out about it, the more horrified I was by...
Hello, welcome to Blueprint of Success. In today's podcast, we have Jackie. Jackie is one of the leading property investors in Bradford. Hello, Jackie. How are you?
Hello, I'm very good, thank you. And I hope you're well. And thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. I cannot wait. So before we get going, what do you expect our listeners or audiences to learn from today's conversation?
Hopefully, there's some inspiration and that they can understand you're never too old to get into property.
Mm-hmm.
So in the time that we've been in property, we've done, 70 odd deals or more. We did 8 in our first year, and we've raised over 5 million in investor finance. So there are lots of things that people can do. Don't think too small, because there is always opportunity. If you think you can do it, then you probably can. Is it Henry Ford who says, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that. What is your contact from your earliest years? I need to understand you.
So, oh my God, I mean, at 64 years old, I've got to have a very good memory here. So I grew up in London, was born down there. My mum was Welsh. My dad came from Lancashire. My dad was an architect, so I guess I had a relative affinity to property early on. I was an only child, very lucky, very loving family, went to good school. I luckily went to a private school when I was 11 and got some fantastic experiences there. Never wanted to go to uni, even though school kind of pushed it, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I always wanted to get out, to get started working. So when I was 18, I started working for Marks and Spencer's in their head office in London. Had an amazing experience there, and still in contact with some of the girls that I started with. So we're 40 odd years on, we still meet up several times a year, which is fantastic.
Wow.
You know, it's great to relive all the wonderful times we had down there. When I was I got married when I was 22, and then I moved up to Yorkshire when I was 26.
Mm-hmm.
So still with M&S, but I moved out from head office onto the division, was the divisional auditor. Did that for a few years, split up with my husband whilst we were up here. So we kind of went our separate ways, but not in a bad way. We were still kind of talking and everything. We didn't have kids, so it wasn't like there was a problem like that. I was more worried about the cats than anything. And then I met my partner now, my husband now, up here. So we've been married, oh my God, 33 years, I think it is.
Wow. Bless your soul.
Yeah, so longevity. But yeah, I left M&S when I was up here, set up our own company doing relocation. So again, a bit of a property focus. Didn't really know enough about entrepreneurship at the time, so wasn't very good at it. It all kind of imploded a bit. Then I was a finance manager for Hallmark Cards. Had my daughter, and then kind of set up on my own as doing weddings. I always wanted to do weddings. It was the one thing that I'd always wanted to do from being tiny. And when I was at school, I wanted to be a fashion designer. So I used to design all sorts of things. So sportswear and wedding dresses. So I used to play badminton for Middlesex and play badminton for Yorkshire. So sport was always a big thing. And then, it just got into doing all the weddings, met up with a florist, bought a florist, ended up learning to be a florist, did that for about 10 years,
Wow.
and then ended up like some health issues in terms of I had a detached retina, started getting arthritis in my hands and such like. At the same time as Steve, my husband, was at risk of voluntary or at risk of redundancy. So it was like, what do we do? What do we do now? And you think when, I mean, I would have been 57 at the time, he was 53. So it's not like you're a spring chicken and the world's your oyster. You've got to think about what can I do? And to be honest, he didn't really like his job. So I said, "Oh, just leave. We'll do something. You paid to leave." Hadn't been there that long in terms of getting a big payout because he had been a contractor, an IT contractor. So he'd been kind of self-employed. But we then, like I say, he left. We'd done a property maybe 7 or 8 years before that we'd flipped. Loved doing it. You know, you all watch Homes Under the Hammer and think everybody can do it. So we did a flip. And we went, right, well, we'll do that. You leave the job. We'll go off. We'll buy a property, do it up, sell it. Buy another property, do it up, sell it.
Fantastic. Just before we drill into that, because I really want to learn a lot about how you got to start flipping. Coming from a privileged background, if I may say, where education might be paramount, you got to go to school, college, and university, and knowing that your parents were actually paying you, you were going to a private school. So, what difficulties did you face with your parent when you decided not to continue to go to college or university?
They were really supportive. And to be honest with you, they didn't pay for me to go to school. I went to private school, but I was lucky enough to get a free place.
Oh,
So I was absolutely thankful to the universe for what I got because I was very privileged that the council paid my school fees, the council paid my transport to get to school, the council paid for my school uniform. The downside of that, I was at school in Hampstead with kids who were in millionaire households. One of my friends, we lived in a house between Wembley and Harrow, which was divided into two flats. We lived upstairs and my grandparents lived downstairs. So loving environments and my grandparents there as well as my parents. At school, you know, one of my friends at school had a townhouse in Kensington and the country house on the banks of the Thames at Runnymede with all this land around it. Stunning and beautiful. How can I invite her back to my little flat between Wembley and Harrow when they have all that? And that was really difficult at school because you always felt not good enough. Always felt didn't have enough money, couldn't afford to go on school trips. So yes, I had the privilege of going to that kind of school, but it kind of puts you in an awkward position for feeling that, do you really belong?
Yeah, I understand that. It must be
Imposter
really,
syndrome.
yeah, it is. So how does that feel then, being among millionaires' kids? And how were you able to navigate, A, not losing confidence, right?
Yeah.
2, not feeling intimidated.
Yeah.
And C, maybe how were you able to communicate with these people to feel like you're part of that society?
I mean, I was lucky enough that I was good at sport. So I was in the netball team, the hockey team, the tennis team, the rounders team, all the above. And playing as part of a team, it gives you a connection.
Yeah.
But I always felt like the poor relation. That was really hard to relate to when I'm playing tennis with people who have got their own tennis courts at home. You know, it's okay. Well, you've just got to be the best you can be and try and make up for it other ways. So I've always been really, really driven to say be a perfectionist, but to be the best that I can be. because it was a way of overcoming that sense of not failure, because that's not fair on my parents, but the sense of actually, yes, being an imposter as the poor kid amongst all these people with millions. But you see their houses, you see their lifestyle, and you want it. You want
Wow.
it. So it is a driver, but
Mhm.
also you see how they take it for granted. So for me, it was always really important as we got successful at doing stuff. You can't take it for granted.
Yeah.
It is down to hard work, that grateful to the universe that, you know, we're in a position we're in now.
You know, like when you're with these millionaire kids and you're thinking about your two-bedroom flat in Harrow, and you've got an event where you and these kids would be going to, and knowing that probably you might not afford what they could afford, you know, especially when you're doing your social gathering, maybe going out. How were you able to kind of try to fit in order for you to be with them all the time?
We didn't go as much as I could have done
Mhm.
because you don't want to be put in a position where you can't afford it. And I don't want other people paying for me.
Mhm.
I didn't want to feel that I was sponging off other people
Mhm.
because I just don't agree with that. So I probably didn't go to as many things as I could have done. So more when I was going out, it was kind of with a couple of the other kids that were in a similar position to me, because at least then we felt on a level. And where we went out, I knew was affordable. I knew would have a good time
Mhm.
and would feel less intimidated.
Wow. That is a very smart move. But what impact has that made to you? It could be positive, it could be negative here, to being who you are today.
I think on the positive side, to succeed, which kind of has a bit of a negative as well, in as much as I never feel I've done quite enough. But on the negative side, I think I've always had massive imposter syndrome. And it has been a huge mindset shift to try and get over that and feel worthy.
Yeah.
Because it's always been, and even like internally, I would never show it externally, but internally, when I'm talking to people who are those millionaire people, and again, even in adult life, I've always been really lucky that I've had friends who've had loads and loads of money. So I've kind of attracted these people who are far, far better off than me. So I've always been the poor person in a group. You know, when they say that you're like, you grow to be by the people you surround yourself with. I've
Yeah.
always surrounded myself with millionaires.
Wow.
It does give a bit of a mental block with money.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you almost can't let yourself earn more or be worth more than that amount you set yourself at is your place.
Yeah.
And to get over that hurdle, massive mindset shift, massive mindset shift. And like the one thing when I think, oh, I have to say, millionaire mindset. If I was a millionaire, would that bother me? And you do grow into it. You know, when I first used to go out to dinner, you'd always be looking at the menu and how much every dish was. So you pick based on the dishes you can afford, not the dishes you want.
Yeah.
And then, lucky enough, now I don't do that. I just go, what do I want? To be honest, it's probably cheapest anyway because I don't eat meat anymore. So. But I make up for it by having a bottle of champagne instead.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. So you see, being there then, as that odd kid, I would say that they can pick out of all these millionaires, going back home then to your two-bedroom flat, thinking or imagining, or maybe you even visited some of these kids, you see where they live, coming back there at your own secure place, because it is secure, it's your home, you know, you're lucky even you got your grandparent downstairs. those millionaire kids may not even have that opportunity. That is priceless. So because you would see that as a lack of not having in your parent not being rich, kind of. So what role the lack of money in your household and growing up have shaped your view about money?
I think it made me very cautious in a way. It didn't stop me spending it. I always like shopping and like spending, but equally you are aware of maybe not looking at things that are excessive spends. So for instance, I look at some things and Jeff Bezos, one of the richest people in the world, and he spent 43 million on his wedding.
Wow.
I'm like, really? Really? Could you not find better things to spend 43 million on than your wedding when there is so much poverty and need in the world? And don't misinterpret that as being, I disagree with capitalism, if you like, and making the money. I don't like waste. And I suppose that's kind of followed through with so much. Like Steve's always saying to me, for God's sake, you hoard everything. I'm not quite the hoarder of all the old newspapers like you see in like bag ladies, but I don't like throwing things away that I think have got a use or a purpose.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like a waste. And I hate that waste because the society is too disposable. We don't value things these days. And things are made in a more disposable way as well. So things just happen and get chucked away. And I think by not having the money, if you like, to do that, like my dad would repair stuff. My dad would build furniture because, and they wouldn't take stuff on credit card or HP, as we used to call it. I think going back to, well, I was born in 1961. In the 60s, the whole culture of society was very, very different.
Yeah.
Very different to how it is today. And yes, there's huge improvements, there's huge advances in technology and all that sort of thing. There's also a huge loss in respect and esteem and value. And I think that's a real shame.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It
I
is.
think, when I was a kid growing up, you'd get on your bike and you'd go down the park and you'd mix with all the other kids and you'd have a whale of a time. Now, most kids don't socialize. They're sitting playing Xbox or whatever they're doing and don't have the social skills. And look how that's reflected in some of the mental difficulties and physical difficulties that some of the kids today have.
Yeah.
The quality of food by comparison is rubbish. When we got a freezer, it was really exciting.
I know.
We didn't have
To get anything in
freezers.
the freezer.
When we got a colour TV, it was like, oh my God, we've landed. Now, and we had what? 2 channels, then 3, then 4. Now you can't find anything to watch on flipping hundreds of channels.
You'll be spending all your time looking for something to watch until you sleep. So just a quick one then. So we do have parents that listen to our podcast, but also watch the interview. For the parent that probably were lucky as your parent to have their kids, say, in private school or grammar schools, if you're in England, that kind of felt the same way your parent felt, because they may have felt your pain, because they know Jackie's there because she's really smart, not really because we're rich. And you'd be seeing all these things around you, coming back home, being content, and not kind of disrespecting your parent, because sometimes it is attempting to go rude at them, say like, why are those kids rich and we're poor? Some kids would ask those questions. So for parents that in a similar position, what advice do you have for those parents?
I was very lucky that my parents put a lot of time into me. They spent time with me. They cared about what I did. I never had a situation where it was like, oh, go and read that or go off and do that. It always had so much time for me. And I mean, I played county badminton from probably being 13, something like that. And for me, growing up, I played badminton 13 days out of 14. I either played club matches, I played county matches, I played tournaments, I did training, whatever it was, I'd revise whilst I was at badminton doing stuff. It wasn't, oh, well, just get on the train and go yourself. Parents used to take me. They would really support me in carting me around the country playing badminton, taking me to training. My dad used to be, he was like a borderline England player. So he would play on court with me and teach me and, you know, really put that time into me. And same with my grandparents. You know, I remember being 3 or 4 and having this tiny golf club set and playing golf in the garden with my grandpa because I was never pushed onto other people. It didn't mean, I don't mean I wasn't independent, but they were, when I look back now at the time, you know, it'd be like, oh, well, yeah, you go out of an evening, you need to be back by this time. I was never, ever back by the time I was supposed to be back. I was so bad at that. And then my parents, or they'd want to come and pick me up, and I'm like, no, 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 I'm fine. I'll get the train. Now I've got a daughter. I understand why they wanted to pick me up. I understand why they would stay up until I got home, why they were worried. But at the time, you don't, do you? You just think, oh, they're just fussing. But to parents, I would say, fuss. Show your kids that you care. Give them the time that you can, because nothing is certain in this world.
Absolutely.
Nothing is certain in this world. I mean, my parents died 2005, 2006. So I was what, 40 something. And both of them died like that.
Wow.
Neither had gone through illnesses. And you just then relive all the things that you wish you'd said, all the things that you wish you did differently, that would have changed things. But by the same token, you hear awful stories now of kids who get ill or things happen to them. So don't take the time together for granted. Really invest all the time you can in your kids and spending time with them. And you know, it's one of the reasons a lot of people get into property because they work all the hours God sends. I mean, I look back, when I was a florist, was probably the age when Tasha was, what would she have been? 11 when I bought the floristry. And I did it for 8, 9 years, maybe no more like 10 years. Every Christmas, I mean, we went to Flora Florist and we had a massive area. Every Christmas, I'd be working all the hours God sends. Come Christmas Day, I'd be flaked out on the sofa because I'm shattered. Valentine's Day, same thing. Mother's Day. The only way I spent Mother's Day with my daughter was because I used to get as a help. So we would put out something like 350 bouquets on Mother's Day.
Wow.
So it's quite a big, it's like an army operations in terms of getting it all made up, buying the flowers, doing everything and getting them all delivered. She would help with sorting out all the drivers for the delivery and everything else. Everybody else for Mother's Day is going out for lunch, having Prosecco, whatever it may be. We were working. We were like full on doing that. And then through the year, you know, weekends, I'll be doing weddings. Some weddings I do 5 weddings in a weekend.
Wow.
So I look at that time and I think I miss so much about growing up. And I'm not one for regrets. I'm really not. But if I had one regret, it would be that.
Wow.
That I didn't spend more time with her and spent so much time concentrating on work.
Wow. I hear
Because
that.
you always think, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it tomorrow.
Mhm.
And then suddenly you find you're like 15 years later and it's like, oh, hang on a minute. Where did my baby go? She's getting married next month.
She doesn't need you anymore, right? Yeah, so I'm very sorry about your parent there. How are you? How are you? I know you said is when you were 40 years old, if I get that correctly. So does that play a part of how you kind of restructure life, or you just get to just carry on after that?
100% because neither of them had had particular illness,
Mhm.
you're not prepared for it happening.
Mhm.
And the shock was massive, which really hits you.
Mhm.
And it's awful. It's an awful thing to experience. As time goes on, you have to think, actually, that was for the best
Mhm.
because they didn't suffer. They would have hated to have a long illness
Mhm.
and, you know, been in and out of hospital and all that sort of thing. My
Mhm.
grandpa had cancer and we saw him have this dragged out illness and it was
Mhm.
awful. So
Mhm.
horrible as it was to lose my parents, I've got to be grateful that they didn't suffer. But it does make you realize you think you've got tomorrow, but you don't. You
Yeah.
don't necessarily have it. And you have to do things now. Don't put it off because tomorrow might not be there.
Mhm.
So whether it be that time with your family, whether it be making the change for work, why so many people spend so long in a job they hate. Life's too short for that. Life's too short. If you can do something that you enjoy, that gives you enough money to live the way you want to live, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
That's what
think it
financial
was
freedom is, isn't it?
absolutely 100%. Financial freedom's not being a billionaire.
Yeah.
If you read Steve Jobs,
Mhm.
he said yeah, when he was dying, he realized however many millions I've got doesn't matter.
Mhm.
If I buy a Rolex, it tells exactly the same time as the watch off the market.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's true, isn't it? Yeah. Do you really need a Lamborghini? Because you can't use it till its full advantage on the roads anyway.
No.
You need to get from A to B. So whether that car is a Ferrari, a Lambo, or Derek Trotter's Reliant Robin, as long as it can get you from A to B and where you need to be, that's what really matters.
Wow.
And that doesn't mean to say I don't think you should aim for doing the best you can do,
Mhm.
but not at the expense of enjoying your life.
Absolutely. I love that, Jackie. Um, you started in audit and finance before pivoting into property in 2017. What sparked the leap into this new world? And how did your early career shape your vision into property?
Okay. I mean, I stopped doing sort of audit and finance, well, other than when I was running the floristry as my own business. So I always had this kind of split brain in
Mhm.
terms of obviously to be an auditor, you have to be super analytical and a pain in everybody else's butt.
Mhm.
You know, you walk in the room and they're all going like this. So going from that really specific, detailed environment to something like being a florist, which is really creative,
Mhm.
is very, very different. And I think the two sides of my brain have always really fought with each other.
Mhm.
Getting into property kind of like helped both sides because when we're doing properties up, you can let the creativity flow a little bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
You've got to make sure you don't let it flow too much because then it's not within budget.
Yeah.
But then the audit side, the accounting side tackles the budget.
Mhm.
So having the structure of finance, accounting, audit, working for a corporate company, I
Mhm.
think helped with being organized, having better systems, keeping things on track,
Mm-hmm.
but having the creative flair from floristry just help put a bit of a wow factor into the properties we do.
Mm-hmm.
And even with, for flips, you can get away with it a bit more because you tend to have a bit more flexibility in your budget. But
Mm-hmm.
even in buy to let, we've always gone into buy to let with the view that this is somebody's home.
Mm-hmm.
Trades that used to come and go, oh, it's only buy to let, it'll be fine. No, it isn't. It's somebody's home.
Yeah.
It has got to be done right. It's got to
Mm-hmm.
be safe. It's got
Mm-hmm.
to be nice. They've
Yeah.
got to want to live there because if tenants want to live there, they're going
Mm-hmm.
to treat it better.
Mm-hmm.
If they feel like you've cut corners and you don't really care, why should they? So I think the transferable skills, if you like, because I always say to people when they're starting out in property, don't say, well, I've got no experience, I've never done this before, I've got no deals.
Mm-hmm.
That may be the case, but we've all started from that point. What you have got is transferable skills from whatever you have done in life up to this point. If you're a project manager, you're organised, you've managed a budget, you've got structure, you're used to dealing with people. If you're a captain of the football team, you've got leadership. If you're a nurse, you've got empathy,
Yeah.
you're helpful. If you're a teacher, you want people to do the best they can. All of those skills are transferable into property
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, property isn't about the bricks and mortar. Property is about people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether you're deal packaging and it's an investor, whether you're trying to raise finance for your own projects, it's an investor. And whatever properties you buy, it's a vendor.
Fantastic. I love that. Your path involved a dramatic journey, launching a new business, raising finance through angel investment, and growing a seven-figure portfolio in just a few years. I commend you for that. What challenges early when you started tested you, and how you were able to resolve that?
Think right early on, right at the very start, bearing in mind where I'd come from growing up, the mindset, the culture of people when I was growing up, only people with lots of money were entrepreneurs. People
Yeah.
didn't have their own business. You worked for people, you went through school, you got a job, you stayed there for life. That was the mindset I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
If my parents now looked at what I'm doing, they'd freak
Mm-hmm.
because it's so out of kilter. So overcoming that kind of block and that imposter syndrome was really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we did the very first property training, like we'd seen this advert and I wasn't going to do it. Steve was going to do it because he decided to take this voluntary redundancy. Saw this advert, it was a 2 hour session. Yep, you go and do it. And he came back and he goes, oh my God, it's amazing. You won't believe what I've learned. All
Mm-hmm.
the things we could do. I've signed us up for a 3 day course. I've paid £1,000 and I've got not an iPad, tablet. I'm like, great, okay. Anyway, we both went down on this 3 day course. And this will be very, very familiar to a lot of people who have all gone on a 3 day course. And you were just engrossed. It was like, oh my God, I cannot believe you can do this. Can't believe you can do it this way. I can't believe that. Where do we sign? And you know
Yeah.
the bit where you run to the back and where do you sign?
Yeah. And you're so excited, you just want to get it done.
He was sprinting. And I remember I out to the loo and came back in and Steve was going, shall we do 3 courses or 5? So obviously there's a financial implication.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, let's just do the 5. We'll just stick it on a credit card. It's fine. It's like profit from a flip. Let's do it. And he's like, who are you? Where's my wife? What happened to the
Yeah,
auditor?
you're in a different mindset, a different zone, aren't you?
You know, like I said, I was 56, 57, whatever. Steve's 4.5 years younger than me. Who's going to employ us at that age? You've passed your employability.
Mm-hmm.
So if this don't work out, we're stuffed.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the option? We make it work.
Absolutely.
And if you think to so many people who are so successful, it's because they really have come from nothing. They've literally been in the gutter. The guy who did The Mask, what's his name? The actor. He's Ace Ventura guy. I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
When he was homeless, he wrote himself a check dated 3 years further on that check was for £10 million.
Wow.
And he just had that in his mind. He would get paid £10 million on that date 3 years on. And virtually to the date, he got the contract for Dumb and Dumber. Jim Carrey, that was it. He got the contract for Dumb and Dumber with a fee of 10 million.
Wow.
If you focus and put your mind to it, and I know it sounds waffly, believe it will happen. I used to think like the first training course I went on, and they would be talking about, the miracle morning and affirmation and visualization and all these mantras and all this. And I'm like, it's not for me. I'm not doing all that baloney or these flipping tree hugging stuff. Absolutely no way. But the more I got it, and the more sort of thing, well, miracle morning is definitely not for me because it starts with morning and I am not a morning person.
Yeah.
But the principle behind, like, people talk about, there's a book called, oh God, what is it now? There's The Power and the Magic, The Secret. So a lot of people have heard of The Secret. The one that I read was The Magic, and it is a day by day. Right, today you do this. Day 2, you do this, and what you did on day 1. And things started happening. It was like, and Steve's definitely full of, it's a load of baloney and I'm not tree hugging. Like, just try it. Because I don't know, about day 4 or 5 or whatever, he came in and went, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We just won the lottery. Now, don't get too excited. It was only a tenner. But to be fair, we hadn't won a tenner on the lottery for months and years. So it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But truthfully, things did start changing. I remember we went to view a house and it was perfect for what we wanted. And it was a 3-bed house with a flat underneath. And I knew that this house would work really well for us because the 3-bed house, we could make 4 beds. It would work for handing over to our social housing association. And the 1-bed flat would work for the homeless charity we work with. So this house was just perfect. So we put in an offer, got rejected. They said, oh no, we've had much higher offers, like estate agents can do.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'm not having that. I am not having that. And I proper visualized, we're getting this house. We are getting this house. I don't care what happens, we are getting it. And we'd viewed it in the October, and it was about 2 weeks before Christmas. Got a phone call from the estate agent to say, are you still interested in that house? I said, yeah, absolutely. So, well, if the offer stands, if it's the same offer, yeah, then it's yours. And we still have that house today. It's perfect. It's
Wow.
absolutely perfect. So, just, I'm saying just by willing it to happen, I don't know, maybe that's a bit fanciful, but I really have gone from being, I'm not doing any tree hugging, to actually gratitude, appreciation, thanking the universe. It makes a difference. It really does make a difference.
Yeah, I love that because I had a saying, if you cannot visualize stuff, you won't get it. So if whatever anybody achieves to life is something that they have subconsciously visualized and then that they manifest. So I love the power of visualization. Meditation is a wicked thing as well. It gets you to kind of go into that mode. I started transcending meditation recently because I do mindful meditation, but that is absolutely amazing. I recommend anybody to go and try it. At the beginning it sounds crazy, especially you know, trying to visualize stuff that is not real. But I'm
Yeah,
telling you, it does work. And all the things I've achieved in my life right now is something that I visualize, I've seen before it start manifesting to me. So
yeah,
I can hear the story from you yourself as well, because that's what lots of property investors are saying, business people, because I thought it was just kind of crazy, especially reading the affirmation. You know,
yeah,
I'm never giving up, I'm wealthy, I'm successful. Like I'm thinking, this is crazy. I'm not wealthy. I'm not successful. Why am I saying this? But it kind of triggers the mind. It fools the
yeah,
mind, because what I've learned from that point was the mind does not distinguish what's real and what's fake. Literally, it's whatever you feeds it, it takes. And
yeah,
then for whatever reason, the power of, I'm not sure if you believe in this, the power of law of attraction
yes,
works. I really believe in
100%.
that, because when I started, I didn't have any money. I didn't have literally nothing. I was living in a 12-bedroom shared house when I started. But as soon as I start looking into property, I start learning, educating myself, I start seeing people that talk about property coming to me. I'm
Yeah,
thinking, whoa, this is serious, right? And then I bumped into this book, The Law of Attraction. Then I start seeing all these signs around me. And then I start visualizing it. I start literally surrounding myself with these people. It really will transform my life. So I can really kind of understand what you're trying to say there, because
yeah,
it has worked, and it's worked for millions of people out there. So
yeah.
anybody wants to try it, feel free to try it. But buying 8 properties in your first year is remarkable, Jackie. Can you share a
Yeah.
standout moment of that victory, or a near miss that taught you a critical lesson?
Because of our age, we realised if we don't do this, there's no alternative. So it was, right, this is going to happen. So we bought the first property at the end of January, which was a three-bed terrace in Keighley. I hadn't even seen it. Steve had gone and seen it. He viewed it, and then did all the negotiation. It was on with an estate agent, but they'd struggled to sell it, so he ended up negotiating with the vendor. When I went to view it, I'm like, "You've got a brothel." Hadn't quite, but the attic bedroom, the stairs were all painted black. The walls were like scarlet Artex, and it
Oh.
had like a 10-watt bulb in it. It looked very, very seedy, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we refurbed it all. We bought it on a mortgage. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of the very few houses we bought on a mortgage, but we bought it on a mortgage. Um, we put into it, including the refurb and the deposit and the fees and everything, I think it was 32,000. The house was 57. We did it all up. We had nightmare with the trades. It was just nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. So when you think I've got it all planned, it's going to go really smoothly, chuck that thought in the bin, because it isn't. Literally, we'd estimated at 8 grand for the refurb. It cost 16. So
Double.
double what we'd estimated. The day before the tenant was due to move in, they turned the water on to test the system, and the plumber hadn't connected the pipes. So all the water came flooding down through the light fitting in the lounge, onto the laminate floor.
Wow.
The day the tenant's moving in, the painter, the decorator, is still decorating. Tasha, my daughter, and I are on our hands and knees painting the skirting board to try and move it on quick, as the tenant is standing on the doorstep to move in. We would then went to refinance it, or to do a further advance after 6 months, like you get told.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been July time, and the lender said, no, you can't do that. The tenant has got to be in 6 months. Right, okay. So November, after the tenant's been in 6 months, we went back and we said, right, will we finance it now?
Mm-hmm.
No, because now you own more than 4 properties, you're classed as a portfolio landlord, so you've got to wait 2 years. Right, okay. So all this churning your money to get it back out again wasn't
Mm.
happening.
Yeah.
So, okay. So after 2 years, we went, right, it's 2 years, will we finance it now? and it was going to cost us something like 6,000 to get out 20.
Wow.
So we're like, oh, do you know what? We won't bother. So literally, we'd bought it with a 5-year fix. When it got to the 5-year point, obviously that point it was due for refinance because the mortgage product had come to an end. We refinanced it at that point. We told them the value was 125 based on comps all around the area. We'd got 5-year lease from the Social Housing Association that's guaranteed rent. The valuer downvalued the property to 110 because as far as they were concerned, the rent should have been £100 less than we were getting.
That's it.
We got a contract for the next 5 years. Having said all of that, that one property over the 5-year period gave us over 20 grand in cash flow, not in rent, just in cash flow.
Wow.
And the amount of money we got back out of it and the equity in the property, it's made us over 100 grand.
Well done.
Where are you going to make 100 grand from an investment of 32 in 5
Very
years?
rare. Nowhere. I don't think that there's any place in Planet App apart from property. So,
Exactly.
so with those 8 properties you had in your first year,
Yeah.
what steps did you take to rack all these properties up?
So because we didn't want to buy a mortgage again, it was like, well, we need to raise finance. So when we started, I was really like, oh, I can't do this. You know that imposter syndrome I talked about?
Yeah.
Can't do this. Training sessions, people say, oh, well, you just need to talk to people. You need to say this and they'll lend you money. And I'm thinking, oh, how can I ask people to lend me money so I can make money? It just did not feel right at all. It just felt until one day I had this light bulb moment. I'm giving these people far better returns than they're getting in the bank.
Absolutely.
At the time, the bank interest was about 2%. We were giving people 6%, giving them an opportunity.
It is.
If I don't tell them how I can help them make their money work harder for them, I'm doing them a disservice.
Correct.
It's not about them lending me money so I can make money. Yes, that's part of it. That's like a byproduct. But I am helping them make more money than they're making currently.
Right.
So why wouldn't they? On top of that, I am also giving somebody a beautiful new home.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be a private tenant, whether it be social housing, they are now getting a warm, safe, comfortable place they can call home. It's not win-win, it's win-win-win.
True.
From that point on, I was going to say it's easy. That's probably not quite true. It was easier. It was easier for me because I was more comfortable having the conversation with people.
Yeah, it's because you were able to convince yourself, because that is something is very hard to uproot. Even some of my investors I work with, especially if you come from an ethnic minority background, you're kind of very reluctant to ask for money because you're told not to ask for money.
Yeah.
You're told not to kind of beg, because
it's a dirty word.
You feel like you're begging for the money. But I told them exactly what you just said there. I said, look, if you don't borrow the money from the people you know, guess what? You're going to go to the bank and borrow that money from the bank, and you get to pay the money to the bank, right? So you rather than get that money or that interest or whatever return you pay into that bank to someone that you know, it is an absolute opportunity for that person, because if they didn't, someone else would do, right? So to break that barrier, it's exactly what you just said there. You've got to convince yourself.
Yeah,
Because
you've
if you
got to
can
believe it.
convince yourself, you can convince anybody, because your body language speaks more than the words, right? You've got to believe in it. By you saying, not actually explaining this to people or not going out there raising money, is a disservice to the people that you know got the money to borrow you, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously they've got that money in the bank. The interest rate is literally crap. Inflation is eating into their money. They sat there thinking they've got lots of money, only to realize 2 years later, that same money will not buy them the thing that they used to buy before.
Yeah.
So I like the way you kind of communicate that. It is a very good way to communicate it. So, but then how were you able to raise? If you could walk me through, if you look back step by step, how were you able to raise those millions to grow your property portfolio?
I mean, as with anything, the first is always the hardest. You know, once you've done it once, it gets easier because now you've got some background, you've got some track record.
Mhm.
But for me, it's you just talk to people.
Mhm.
How can people work with you if they don't know what you do?
Mhm.
And people are so reluctant to put themselves out there
Mhm.
because I think as a nation, we're such a reserved nation. Like you said,
Mhm.
money's a dirty word. Nobody likes to talk about money. Nobody likes to bolster themselves and boost their position because it sounds like you're bragging. You know,
Yeah.
think of the Americans.
Mhm.
If you've got a group of people and it's like, who wants to come on stage? The Americans are all at the front going, me. And all the English are at the back going, "Oh, me. And you've got to put yourself out there
Mhm.
because people don't just think, do you know what? I've got some money. I'm going to look for somebody called Jackie that I can lend it to.
Mhm.
No, they've got to know that I need it. I'm going to do
Mhm.
something good with it and it's going to help
Mhm.
people and they're going to get a better return. So you have to tell everybody what you do.
So
And
one,
don't,
you got to network and tell people about what you do, basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
and don't judge a book by its cover.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you go networking and you see the guy in his Savile suit and his Rolex and he's looking the bee's knees, he ain't got any money. He spent it all on his suit and his Rolex.
Absolutely.
You want the guy in the corner with the torn jeans and the plain white shirt.
Yeah.
He's the one with the money because he doesn't have to flash it around. He doesn't have to
Mhm.
show it off. So
Mhm.
people make judgments about people incorrectly. So
Mhm.
to start with, don't make any judgments about anybody. I
Good.
mean,
No
our
judgment.
very first investor was a 19-year-old lad we played badminton with.
Mhm.
He literally, we told everybody at badminton what we were doing. And then some months on, he said, do you think we can have a conversation? Because my grandma's died and she's left me some money.
Mhm.
So obviously an awful situation to have inherited the money. He wanted to do something with it. So he said, could you come and talk to my parents and myself about how
Mhm.
it all works? So that was it. We went round, talked to the family. He put in 10,000, his mum and dad put in 10,000, and they were our very first investors.
Wow.
Because they were lending to our business,
Mhm.
we could then pool the money within our business to then buy a property. So we got more
Mhm.
investors on board and bought property. Obviously, if you're doing a JV, you can't do it that way because you
Mhm.
collective investment schemes, FCA rules, all that sort of thing. You
Mhm.
can't put people's money at risk unless they're sophisticated or high net worth. You can
Mhm.
tell I teach this bit, can't you? So unexpected people.
Mhm.
Another guy, I went out to walk our dogs. We have a field next to our house. I went through the gate to walk our dogs. Cat jumped over the wall with us as well. We've got 4 dogs, 5 cats. So it was a bit of a family affair. I met this couple walking up the field with their dog. Their dog sort of went to take a chunk out of my cat. It was quick enough and got out of the way. But like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We got talking, chatting away, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm really sorry. I've got to go. I'm handing a house over to social housing, so I just need to get down and be there. What do you mean? I said, well, we work with private investors, private people just like yourself, who have got money that they want to get a better return on. They lend it to our business. We then buy a property, we do it up and rent it out to a social housing association who put in people in need. And then we refinance and pay the investor back.
Wow.
Oh my God, that's amazing. We actually donate to shelter every month because we really are vested into helping homeless people and people in need.
Mhm.
Can we invest with you? we've got an ISA that's coming out in a couple of months. Can we lend it to you instead? Yeah,
Wow.
a few days. So we kept in touch, because if you think, let's just say they're giving 20 quid a month to shelter, out of that 20 quid, it's paying for salaries, it's paying for offices, it's paying for advertising, marketing, God knows what. 50p maybe is helping the people they want to help. And that
Absolutely.
20 quid's gone.
Yeah.
This way, they keep the money, they get more money because I'm paying them interest on it, and it's all going to help somebody that they want to help. So complete turnaround for them. So their ISA came out for 15,000. Over the years, they've kept adding more in. They're now at 200,000.
Wow.
So just because somebody's starting with a small amount, don't mean to say that's all they've got. So again, never ever judge. Never judge. Because if people want to work with you, if you prove to them that you are ethical and trustworthy, then they'll work with you for life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. It's all about conversation, isn't it? I like the way you've spoken to that individual. The reason why I like it is, here's the thing. Most people, when you ask them what they do, they just say a word. I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
Or I'm a property investor. That does not say anything about what you do. But you describing what you do, you see how you've attracted them to yourself.
Exactly.
Right? You kind of painted a picture of what you do.
Yeah.
Right? And then that they resonate with them. When they resonate with them, they feel kind of obliged to kind of support, because especially said, look, I'm handing a key for social housing to help people get houses. They're like, whoa, that is really serious.
Yeah.
Right? And you didn't even ask for money, right? You didn't ask for money, but you presented an opportunity indirectly to them in a clever, smarter way.
Yeah.
Because if you'd have bumped into them and said, look, I'm a property investor, I need £50,000, can you help me? They'd be like,
yeah, no way.
no way. So I like the way you painted that. So for anybody that's looking for money or trying to raise funds, the best way to do it is not to ask for it, but to kind of paint a picture about what you do, and kind of maybe ask them if they know anybody else. But you did not even do that, right?
Yeah.
You just kind of tell them, look, I'm doing this, that's what I do. And all of a sudden you've got them now, and you take that 10,000 investment to about £200,000. Well done for doing that. That is absolutely amazing. Well done. Well done. So how did your personal value and struggles lead you to focus on social housing and ethical investing?
As we've said, I was lucky that I didn't have a background coming from that place. But my parents were always really, really caring. And I just grew up in an environment where you help people, you do right by people, that you have a caring attitude, and you do what you can to help others be better off, in whether it be financially or whether it be in the way they live or whatever. So I've always wanted to do things that drive that forward. So I mean, I'm the director of a CIC as well for a dog charity. So animals has always been a really huge part. So kind of, I suppose, started with, hated the fact that landlords didn't allow tenants to have pets. Like, pets are part of your family. Why would you not allow that? So it kind of started from that place that we've always allowed our tenants to have pets. Because I foster for Keithley Cat Care. I run our dog charity in Bosnia. I just see so many animals suffering, often because of landlords and their attitude. And it then kind of rolled on into, well, actually, how can we help people get better homes? And the more I found out about it, the more horrified I was by the whole social housing situation. It's like I came across people within property training that were in that space, and talking to them, and just loved what they did. and wanted to do similar up here, because the impact on society as well as the individual is massive from the way that we do social housing now. You have families that are put in bed sits or in hotel rooms to have a roof over their head. But that is such a small step to help them. A family living in a room gives them very little benefit. It ends up with them having mental difficulties as they grow up and get older. It has physical difficulties as they grow older because they're not in a healthy environment. So not only is there impact on social housing and the housing part of the government, it impacts on the NHS, because if they're not brought up in a good environment to start with, the health issues that they have further on in their life is costing the NHS money. And it's not great for the life of those people. Whereas if you can take those people and put them in somewhere they can call their own home, now they are living like other people. They don't feel separated and undervalued because they've got a home. They can live the way that they should be able to live. They can blossom and grow and flourish. Their kids can have a much better chance at school. And from a financial point of view, instead of the council paying 100 quid a night, so what's that? £3,000 a month. They can pay £700 a month or £600 a month for a house. Where is the financial sense of paying out for temporary accommodation? It makes no sense whatsoever. And then you look around and there are empty properties everywhere. And you try and talk to the council about buying them. Ooh, can't be seen to be giving you preferential treatment. I'd rather put it on an auction. So somebody in the south, because obviously up here in Bradford and Keighley, houses are quite cheap. I'd rather put it on an auction and somebody in London can go, oh, wow, I can buy a house for 60 grand. And then they don't do anything with it because they bought this house on the auction. They've never viewed it. They don't realise the amount of work that there is to do with it. They don't have the connections and the trades to be able to do that work. And it sits empty for God knows how much longer. Whereas had we been able to buy it, we could have turned that house around in maximum 3 months. There could be people living in it. And it would just be just financially better for everybody and socially better for those people.
I really understand that. Basically, you got to be able to kind of understand the pain point, especially now the government is spending serious money in this. Now they've even gone to hotels. They're paying so much money in that. So I can see the gap in the market, and it's a rising gap. And that gap is very hard to fill, especially what's going on in the Middle East, Ukraine, and places like that. It would be ever going to be a massive demand for it. I just wanted to walk you back a little bit on your flipping part of the business when you started. So if I was an investor now, who wants to start my property investment journey? But obviously I haven't got lots of money to go buy more houses. I want to buy a property so I can sell it, because that flipping is, and then make profit so I can go again and buy more houses. So if I was to start that journey today, what advice would you have for me?
Flipping market's quite tough.
Okay.
Because the number of houses that to flip something, you've got to add value.
Yeah.
So, yes, you can get something that's a good deal and sell it on, but you've got to factor in legal costs, you've got to factor in selling costs, all of those things. So you've got to have a decent profit margin in there that you actually do end up with some profit. You've got to be prepared and have the trades available to be able to do the work. But to start with, you've got to find that property. And that property can be really hard to find because there's seemingly less and less properties that need work available. And builders are all over them. And the trouble is, if you're up against a builder, they don't cost their time into their refurb. So they are always prepared to pay more for that property than you will be if you're paying a builder to do the work. If you're not paying the builder to do the work and you're doing it yourself, is that a good use of your time? So really, the best way to find a flip is direct to vendor.
Okay.
You need to be proactively looking for properties that look in some distress, that need work, that you can add the value. And flips will always work better in areas that are owner-occupier areas. Because if you're going to do a flip in a rental area, most likely your buyer's going to be an investor. What do investors want? They want a discount. So you're not going to maximize your return on the flip. So you need to be in owner-occupier areas. You need to be looking for those properties that need work. And you need to be contacting the owner, either by putting a letter through the door or trying to find them on land registry and making contact to see if they want to sell the property. You can ask the council in the empty homes if it looks like the property's empty. You can ask the empty homes officer. Some may not provide an introduction to the owner. But I would say that is the best way, because you've got to get ahead of everybody else on the market to make it work.
So I like that. So taking that kind of, I would say, dilapidated house, bringing life to it. You've done tens of these properties. You're now renovating it, or say, I'm now renovating that property. What do I have to take into to be able to attract someone to buy that property as soon as literally they visit it? So I have more chances to flip that property as quickly as I possibly can. So what are the stuff I need to consider during renovation to make that happen?
When you're buying the property, you need to start with the end in mind. So you've got to know that there is demand for owner occupiers to buy in that area. That's the first thing. There's got to be good demand. You've got to know at what price point they're buying. And remember that buyers are a pyramid. If you've got first-time buyers across the bottom to the pyramid of the people at the top who are spending millions, then if you're doing a flip at £1 million, you've got a lot less buyers than if you're doing one cheaper that's a first-time buyer. And also first-time buyers aren't in chains. So it's quicker to flip the property. The more levels of a chain you've got, the slower it's going to be. And the more painful and stressful. So, look at the market that you're going to flip into. Don't overspend on the refurb, because people get carried away. They're flipping a 2-bed terrace and they're putting in granite worktops. Well, really? Does it warrant that cost? No, it doesn't. You've got to give something the wow factor as cheap as possible without it looking cheap. So different colours, bit of a feature wall, maybe wallpaper instead of paint. Put in, the wiggly taps, because people love a wiggly tap. It's a bit of a feature, a bit of a gimmick. Waterfall taps as opposed to a normal tap. Things that people go, oh, that's elevated a bit. It's not adding a lot of cost in the scheme of things. But from a buyer's perspective, it looks wow. And I would always say stage it. We stage every property we flip. Because one, if it goes on Rightmove, if you're still doing the grey carpet, white walls, so's millions of other people, how's your property going to stand out on Rightmove from all the rest? I would bring a bit of colour in and not do white and grey anymore, but anyway, but I would always stage it because it stands out. Why do builders do show homes? It's because people walk in and they're selling a lifestyle. They walk in and they go, oh my God, this house is amazing. I want to live here. Because they're looking how it's been staged. And if it's something that you've done a bit more open plan, people struggle with visualizing the space. and how they can use the space. Whereas a stager will sort that space out and they will zone it so people then can see how the space can be used to its best ability. And the third thing is, when a room is empty, bizarrely, it can look smaller than when it's furnished. So people will look at, particularly like maybe a third bedroom, and they go, I don't think I can get a bed in here. But if it's staged and you've got a bed in and like, you know, a wardrobe or whatever, then people, oh, actually, yeah, it is a proper bedroom. So when people work out the refurb costs at the beginning, when they're budgeting, don't just budget for a rewire and central heating and plastering and decor. Include in that budgeting staging, because that is like the cherry on top.
Wow.
And people miss that. I mean, in America, everything's staged. And we're just kind of catching up with that now. So 100% stage stuff.
Right. Okay. So what does the landscaping, the external of the property, how does that play a role to the value of the property?
Need curb appeal. Again, you can do the most amazing job inside, but if you've left all the weeds in the garden and it's all overgrown and looks a bit tatty, you've lost it before they've even got in there.
Brilliant.
So you've got to make sure it looks good from the outside. Now, that might be painting the windowsills. It might be putting a new front door on. Definitely, if it's got any kind of garden, just make sure you don't have to do landscaping, because it's not going to warrant it in a 2-bed terrace, but make it neat. Make people see that it's manageable. So, you know, if you've got a few broken flags, replace the flags. Just make it look neat and tidy, and people can see themselves maybe sitting out in the garden on a nice warm summery day, having their G&T or whatever it may be. Make it from the front. They'd be happy to have guests coming to the house because it looks nice.
Fantastic. So I really like that, because the external of the property is what really sells it. It's like buying a car, isn't it? What attracts you to that car first is the way it looks, and then you go inside and check it out and see what it is, and then you obviously buy it. So I know it's kind of similar to buying a property, renovating it, refurbishing and refinancing it. So could you kind of explain what the differences are, and what are the differences between those two strategies, and what an investor would need to look for if they're doing buy, refurbish and refinance?
It depends what their end game is.
Mm-hmm.
If people want lumpy money now, then they need to do something that's going to give them those chunks of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's either going to be flipping, but you've got time scale where you've got to wait for that chunky money to come in.
Mm-hmm.
But it will give you a lump that you can do something else with.
Mm-hmm.
They might go into deal packaging,
Mm-hmm.
where they're charging a fee to somebody to be able to buy them a property, find them a property that they then have, and they get paid obviously much smaller lumpy money, but they get a bit of lumpy money doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're going to do a buy to let or BRR, then they're getting cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
And if they need cash flow, if they want cash flow because they want to leave their job, they want to replace their income, then they need to start building up a portfolio where that cash flow is going to take over. It means they can go part-time or leave their job. If it's about leaving a legacy, then they want something where you've got capital growth, because you don't need it now. You're building for the future, you're building for your family. If you just want a good investment, then you kind of want a bit of both.
Okay.
So, I mean, we deal package as well. We help people build their portfolios. For us, we focus much more on buy to let than BRR. And the reason being that we can get a tenant in quickly. We'll do a buff and fluff for them. So, you know, decor, carpets, make it nice for a tenant. But then you get the tenant in quickly, you start getting that cash flow. And in that situation, I always say to people, if they've got 100,000, So excluding, forget fees and legal costs and stamp duty and all that. If you've got £100,000, if you're here, let's say you buy a house, well, let's say you've got 100,000 in the bank. You're going to get £4,000 interest on it in a year, maybe.
That is if you're lucky.
If you're lucky. So you've got 104,000 in a year's time, which is reduced by inflation. Or you could buy one house in cash for £100,000. Let's say that capital growth is 5%. So in Bradford at the moment, according to Rightmove, last year it was running at 9%. According to the ONS, it was running at 10.8%. So Bradford is hot at the moment.
Wow.
But let's say 5% because it's much easier on the math. So if you buy a house for 100,000 in cash in a year's time, you're going to have 5% growth. So you're going to have an asset worth 105,000. Then you're going to have, let's say, 8,400 in rental income because you're not paying a mortgage. So you've made 13,400 in a year. Unless that tenant leaves at some point and you've got a void period.
Yeah, okay.
Or you split that 100,000 into 4 lots of 25,000 deposit. And you get a mortgage on each of those houses for 75,000. Okay, you've got to pay a mortgage now. Every house is going up 5%. So now your 100,000 is creating 4 times 5%. Now you've got 20% return on it. So in each house, you've only got 25,000. The mortgage isn't moving. So each house, you've now got 30 grand's worth of equity. You've made 20 grand in a year. But you've got 4 lots of rental income, less the mortgage. So let's say your rental income is 3 grand, your cash flow is 3 grand a property. That's another 12 grand in cash flow. So now you've made 32 grand in a year. Without really any effort.
I feel you.
And they're still growing, and that property's going up 5% every year and every year. And people go, yeah, but what about when the market crashes? Okay. Well, when the market crashes, there'll be a dip. Don't refinance your property when there's a dip.
As simple as
Don't
that.
sell it when there's a dip. But there has never been a 10-year period when property has been worth less at the end of the 10 years than at the start. Even 2008, 1997, whatever it was, none of those years has the value of property been worth less than it was 10 years previously.
Wow.
On
Interesting.
average, property goes up 7.3% a year.
Wow. Wow. I love that. I love the way you looked at the capital appreciation there. I like the way you've explained leverage there. So instead of buying one property with £100,000, you can use the same £100,000. You go buy 5 houses. All of them give you the cash flow every single month. If they go up by 5%, you've made another, how much? 5% per house. You're talking about £20,000 plus your monthly rental income. But here's the kicker. Those properties are gonna stay with you until the end of literally. They will outgrow you. Your children, your great-great-grandchildren will use the same properties. So it is literally mind-blowing when you think about it. And looking at the income you make from those properties versus any alternative income stream, you'll be thinking, what sort of investment I could do with that minimum time and effort that would give me the same sort of return? It's very rare to get things like that. Unless if you're very, very lucky and you're good in gambling, maybe you can go into Forex, crypto, but you've got to trade to make that money. But with this, you don't got to trade. You buy the properties, do them up, as you said, cosmetics, pass it on to an estate agency to deal with, and then you get your monthly income. When a repair comes, you've got your handyman or your maintenance team to go and sort it out. You don't have to physically be there looking at the computer or trying to go and fix it yourself. So I really like that idea, and that's one of the ideas that really brings me into property, like literally make me love property. I love it, and I can do whatever it takes to buy houses. So I really
at another level of social housing,
Yeah.
and you've got guaranteed rent. So, and you've got no management fees, and most of the maintenance is covered.
Wow. You see?
So
Even better.
another level still,
Yeah, even
far
better.
more passive.
There's so many levels there. But I'm going to touch into what my audiences or our audience would really, really look forward for you answering, because you are a specialist in raising funds. Let me paint a picture. I've got an investor who bought a 3-bedroom dilapidated house. That investor then got this property. It's a very good property. They've agreed a deal with the vendor, and the vendor is happy to sell the property. They've got all the know-how, they've got all the knowledge, but their lack of funds. And they really want to get this property because they know this property is really good property and they could make lots of money from it, from either flipping or even recycling their money and using the BRRR strategies. So what step do they need to take in order to attract investment for that property so they can buy it and do whatever they want to do with it?
So one option they've got, they could do an assisted sale.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't actually buy the property, but they do a deal with the vendor. So they're saving stamp duty, they're saving all the legal, they've got a small amount of legal fees, but they're saving all those buying costs. So they do assisted sale.
So for
They
the,
then,
for the audience that might not know what assisted sale is, could you kind of elaborate what that is?
yeah. So they would agree with the vendor that if the vendor can't sell that property because they need more money for it than the market is showing in that condition, they need to improve the property to get more money for the vendor. So what they would do is agree with the vendor that they will pay for the refurb to add value to that property.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, they will sell that property, take out all their costs.
Mm-hmm.
They will guarantee a price to the vendor, and then they will either, well, split the profit. It doesn't have to be 50-50. Splitting the profit can be 30-70, it can be 70-30, it can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's whatever they can negotiate. They split the profit, so they come away with some profit, having never bought the house in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And the vendor's in a good position because they can now sell a house, much better house, get more money for it. And they've got a bit more than they were going to get if they left it on the open market.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way of doing it. If they're going to physically buy the house,
Mm-hmm.
then sell it or keep it,
Mm-hmm.
then I would say talk to everybody in terms of going out and getting funding. Networking is something that you can't just go, oh, I found a house, I'm now going to go networking. For people to lend you money, you've got to build that know, like, and trust. Because even though you're giving people an opportunity to earn more than they're getting in the bank, they ain't just handing over 50 grand if they don't know you. Because they're seeing you lying on the beach in the Bahamas with their money. They need to know that you are giving them the return that you say you're going to give them their money back. Their money's safe and you're going to do with it what you say you're going to do with it. And you have to build a rapport, a relationship with people for them to trust you to do that.
So how do you kind of, I know you've communicated with the people, you've built that relationship. Obviously, we're going to present an opportunity to them, right? So what are the key metrics? Do you have to kind of tell the potential investor to persuade them to put their money into work with you?
The start, yes. At the start, they need to know how you're going to spend their money, what sort of strategy you adopt. So if you just say I'm a property investor, lend me your money, what does that mean? But like for us, I would say to people, we do buy-to-let social housing in West Yorkshire. So with the money that you lend to my business, we'll be buying a property, doing it up and putting in family in need. And then we'll refinance you and pay you your money back. They can see the path. They can see how I'm going to use the money. There's the emotional bit in there because we're helping a family in need. They know how I'm going to get them their money back. So they feel safer that actually, yes, this isn't so risky. They may, and I say may, want security. Because not every investor does want security. When people start, they're obsessed that every investor wants security. Yes, they need a loan agreement. You
Yeah.
need to have a written contract on how much they're lending you, at what rate, for how long.
Yeah.
But not everybody needs a charge over a property or a personal guarantee or additional security like that. That security will depend on the personality of the lender, not on the amount they're lending you.
I hear you.
Some people won't lend you a fiver unless you give them a PG. Some people, that loan agreement, as long as it is a good, well-written legal document, they're happy with that. The biggest investors we've had have all been happy with loan agreements.
Brilliant.
The only times we have done additional security is where we are dealing with people who are super analytical and in jobs like accountants or solicitors, where they look at every single possible thing that could potentially go wrong, and it's going to.
Right, I can feel that. It makes sense. So basically, for people that don't know what PG is, would you be able to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, a personal guarantee. So a personal guarantee, you have to go to a solicitor, and basically they sit you down and tell you that by doing a personal guarantee, you are promising that you will pay that investor back at all costs. And that may mean you've got to sell your house, you've got to sell whatever assets you've got to be able to repay the investor. You are personally guaranteeing that loan. Problem is, if somebody is going to lend 10 grand to your business, let's say they're lending 10 grand and you're giving them 6% interest. They're going to get £600 interest in the year. If you then put a personal guarantee on that, that personal guarantee is going to cost anything between 300 and 700 quid. It's just not viable.
Not worth it, yeah.
No, not at all. If somebody's lending you 100,000, yeah, okay, it makes more sense. So you've got to look at the level of security in ratio to the amount of money that people are lending you. Because if I go and put a PG on a 10 grand loan, effectively, I'm now giving that person 9%. £600 actual interest I'm giving them, plus the extra £300 I'm paying out for the solicitor, minimum.
So basically, if there's a way you could avoid PG, personal guarantee, I think is best to avoid it. But if you're starting out, sometimes as long as the sum is a bit higher, not like £10,000, I can see probably you could do that. So I like that. Thank you so much for explaining that. So another question that I have that I would really want to know your perspective about, and I would like you to advise our audiences, is that what advice do you have for female leaders, female property investors that are looking to go into property where it's male dominated? What advice do you have for people like that, and what sort of encouragement would you give to people that are thinking, oh, this is a male dominated thing, I can't do it, it's not for females?
Okay. Don't take any shit.
I like that.
Bluntly, if you let yourself be intimidated, they will. Know your stuff. Know what you're doing. Know the outcome you want. Familiarize yourself with how things can be done. You might not know all the answers. You won't know all the answers. So don't be a know-it-all. Be open to suggestions, but know the outcome that you want. And don't take any attitude, because people can go, oh, she's just a woman who don't know what they want. Our builders, if I phone them up, they now go. It was one of them, Steve had been speaking to them, and I phoned them and they go, what have I done wrong? So you've got to be firm. You have just got to go out there with confidence, whether you feel it or not. You've got to go out there with confidence and know the outcome that you are aiming for.
Fantastic. I love that question. Let's look back to the females that are maybe 50 years old, are thinking, oh, come on, this is not for me anymore. You know, I'm too old. I'm in my 50s. I should be looking at something else. And property is not for me anymore. So what advice do you have for those people?
Age is just how you feel. Numbers mean nothing. So quite often, like, we'll get people coming on who are a little bit older and they're like, I don't know if I can do it. You can do anything that you want. You only have to believe it. There is nothing stopping you doing what you believe you can do. So just because you're a little bit older, you've got all that experience behind you. Just think, people come in and they worry about, I'm too young. People start in property at 21 and think, nobody's going to take me seriously. I'm too young. They won't believe I know what I'm talking about. Same to them. Believe in yourself and you can do it. I mean, my daughter, she has a staging company and she has her own property business.
Beautiful.
She's 28.
Bless
She
herself.
started when she was at university. And again, so she's young and female. So she's got an age issue potentially and a gender issue potentially if she let it. But dear God, everybody's scared to death of her, even me.
I love that. You know,
So
it's all
you've
about
just
the
got to be
mindset, isn't it?
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah, it does
you've
have
got
to
to
be
be
yourself.
yourself.
Good. We're nearly there now. Quick fire round questions. Very short and precise, if you may.
Okay.
And the first one is there something you used to strongly believe and you recently changed your mind on?
Yeah, I used to believe I couldn't do it. And now I believe I can do most things. I can do pretty much anything.
Fantastic. I love that. Is there something you believe that lots of people disagree with?
Animals are really, really important
Mm-hmm.
and that they are absolutely, totally feeling beings and should not be treated the way they are treated, particularly by the food industry.
Wow. Is there something in the world you fundamentally think is wrong and you would like to change?
Animals in the food industry,
Brilliant.
without a doubt.
I love that. This podcast is called the Success Blueprint Podcast. What does blueprint means to you?
Being clear about what you want to achieve, making sure you've got goals and targets, both for the future and the steps along the way. Because if you set out those mini goals, those mini targets to achieve, to get to that big goal, it's like having a signpost on the road when you're trying to get to somewhere you've never been before.
I love that. Final one. If there was only one person you would like me to interview, who would that person be and why?
Well, I need to say my daughter now, don't I? Because she can tell you all about staging.
Fantastic. Go for it.
But actually, yes, because for me, talking from an old point of view, she's 28 now, but she's been doing it since she was 21. She can talk about her journey, her experiences in property, because she's done flips, she's got buy-to-lets, she's just buying one at the moment, and also about her staging business and how that helps and how she set that up literally from scratch while she was still at uni.
Fantastic. Kindly share her details. We would love to hear from her.
I will indeed.
Definitely. What an amazing way to end the podcast. And it has been a great special moment sharing about your family life, how you grow up, and all these other stuff around property. I really loved it. Thank you so much for doing that. If someone is interested in your services, in your programs or what you do, how would they contact you and where should we follow you and where are you hanging out on social media?
Okay, so LinkedIn, Jackie Collier Property, or for sports people, we also have Pro Sports Property Partners. So both on LinkedIn. So Jackie Collier Property, Instagram, also Jackie Collier Property. On Facebook, then Jackie Collier, me, as my personal page. Airworth Property Services is the company page on Facebook. And they're really, I'm too old for TikTok. I have got a TikTok account, and like the guys who work for us kind of do it, but over my head for TikTok.
Okay,
So just
fantastic.
message me, please. Just message me. I would love to talk to people about how we can either help them get into property, how we can, whether they want to learn how to do it themselves, whether they want help in getting a property portfolio started, you know, if they want social housing on it, even better. So
Fantastic. I love that, Jackie. I really love that. So obviously share your social handle. Well, we have your social handles anyways. We will put that on the description and in all the other channels that we would be sharing this. So you've been amazing. You've been inspirational.
I have loved it. I've had such a great time. Thank you.
This has been amazing. Thank you for helping people transform their life through investment properties. And I really, really appreciate you. I like the journey. I like everything you've done. And I am blessed and honored to have you on the Blueprint of Success. Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.